for me, it is one of the most powerful mechanism that Kusama and Polkadot has, because they represent how the network can auto regenerate itself. How this is the kind of the output of all the process, is where these funds go.
The treasury is something that is quite interesting on Polkadot, because for the first time, a blockchain has a budget that it can self-manage. The idea of the treasury is to allow building the ecosystem. So the treasury is, first of all, it's filled up from the network itself. So every time someone is making a transaction, there is a little part of this transaction that will go to the treasury. So the treasury is growing over time. The goal being to be able to reinvest some amount, some funds from the treasury to build the ecosystem.
So at the moment, we have two types of spending mechanisms, spending proposals and tips, right? And so anyone can propose a spending proposal and anyone can tip, but it's not enough. We need to kind of like find a more efficient way for the council to allocate the resources. And so, for example, at the moment, I'm working with other community members into kind of like a third proposal that will allow the council to allocate the resources in the treasury and kind of like unlock these portions for bounties that will be taken by community members and monitored by a curator.
I see the treasury as being sort of the limbs of Kusama into the real world. So right now, every single action by the treasury needs to happen based on decision of the council. We're definitely working on ways to reduce the amount of involvement the council needs to get action enacted by the treasury. Council sets the direction, right? Council is like the brain. It says, go this way. And then the community as a whole selects people to handle the decision making, and then it rewards people with the treasury funding based on those decisions, and we'll have this like nice large mechanism to affect change.
Yeah, I'm leading the grants program at the moment at Web3. So the idea is to use the funds we collected and give it back to the community, and therefore it's similar to the treasury, actually, to the on-chain treasury. And I always see our Web3 Foundation grants program as just a testing field for a future completely decentralized on-chain funding mechanism. In general, teams are open to apply for both, but if they apply for the Web3 Foundation program, then it needs to be key infrastructure and technology pieces. And for the treasury, I think it's currently less defined, and everyone can apply for the treasury.
The Kusama network will have the freedom to fund projects that are non-technical projects as well, and that allow the community to discuss and talk about open topics. Also, the Web3 Foundation grants has a limit, a minimum and a max, I think, cap in which the grants can go. I'm not sure, I think. And the treasury proposals don't have that. It's only the limit of how much money how many tokens the treasury has, but that's it.
At the initial phases of the network, it is good to have a centralized organization like the Web3 Foundation that distributes these grants for different teams to build what we as a centralized organization think that it is better for the network. But obviously this should evolve to something decentralized, something like what we have in the treasury, and yeah, this aligns perfectly with how the network works and so on. So.
Any proposer that works in the link between technology and art, any proposer that works with technology as a way to express their art should be able to access the treasury. If they can justify how the funds will be spent in a proposal, and the proposal makes sense for the community. There are different ways to contribute to the community, and developing code or developing patches for the network is not the only way. Entering the discussion on what Kusama means for social movements, for political movements, on what Kusama means for digital art and visualization and design, it's also very, very important because it opens doors to other users that have not been heard yet, or that have been heard not so widely.
Maybe even at some point, things like holding events could be done through the treasury and decide in a decentralized fashion.
I'm sure we're going to see lots of projects around education. So, for example, documentation and movies to explain how things work, to make it more accessible, because the whole ecosystem grew a lot, and today it's much easier to use than 1 or 2 years ago. But there are still lots of work to be done to make it more accessible for people at different levels.
And you can have such a larger design space with what Kusama's for. Like it could be there to make money for the Kusama holders. It could be there to propagate a belief. It could be there to just give grant funding for things that otherwise wouldn't get funded. For the edgy experimental stuff that the foundation might not feel comfortable funding, Kusama could do. So it just has a much wider breadth and larger design space to experiment than kind of a foundation who has its charter in Switzerland to do a very specific thing.
I want to stress that I think the mechanism of an on-chain funding system that is decentralized to a certain degree is really, really useful, and that potentially if you have something that can sustainably fund the system itself, that you can envision that something like this works in 50 years from now or longer, and yeah, that's really interesting.
So my vision for the artist, or for any proposer, for anyone that proposes a treasury spend, is to be engaged with the community. My goal at the moment, or I think the goal of Kusama, should be to grow its community, and the proposal spending could be a way for people to understand and educate themselves into how the network works, and later on to be part of discussions on what's the philosophy behind the network, and then to be part of a governing body or to ask for more funds from the treasury, or to create a collective or a society. So for me, the direct effect that supporting this type of projects has is grow the community and experiment with it, and make sure that the proposers are engaged to the dynamics of the network. Either be as a token holder, as a passive token holder if you want, or as a council member. It doesn't matter. that they can find their role in the network is very, very important. For that, we need to educate these non-technical people.
Kusama is going to get parachains before Polkadot will, and it will be really interesting to see the first set of parachains interacting with Kusama. And I think one of the things that it would be really important to fund is fund a lot of teams to try building parachains on Kusama. Even if these teams will fail, it'll be important to see how they failed, what they did wrong, or how we can improve. But I think it's really important to start seeing from that perspective and funding those users to scale the network in that way.
So in the end, the only really thing you can do is you can pay people for the concrete things they do. We want to pay validators for running validators, but we don't know if the validators are the same people or one people. But the idea is to be able to get everyone involved. If we can pay people little things, then that gives them power in the system. So we can certainly pay people for building things. We can use the treasury wisely. We can tip people for doing anything that interacts with the system that helps us build a new social model. If we can give them tokens, then we give them power.
I think we need to continue to invite new people in by using KSM. Like, one of the early things that Bitcoin was great at is like everyone was giving everyone Bitcoin all the time because they just wanted people to get into this experiment, right? This kind of experiment, a new form of like a new monetary unit, a new form of money. So I think Kusama has an opportunity to use the treasury in a way that expands the community through getting people to interact with the base unit of the blockchain, which is the KSM token, through tips, through treasury proposals, and just being open to them. Being open to spending that KSM, because if we're all holders and hoarders, there's not going to be new community members and there's not going to be new experiments.
The treasury makes no sense if people don't use it. The problem is that a lot of the community members still don't know that they can use it or don't know how to use it. In that sense, a fully developed treasury would allow a lot of different ways for people to use the funds. What I see is a treasury that has more than 2 spending mechanisms, that has more than that, and a community that is able to actually use this in the right way.
In my head, talking and solving.